Hey folks, welcome to the next little Eternal Weekend Diary video, categorizing my testing and whatnot. So the results of the first two Eternal Weekend events are in. Let's bring those up on screen. Sorry, this is going to be just kind of a messy look at a Reddit post. Don't have formal results in yet. So the first event was split. Snoko and Rug Delver, kind of unsurprisingly, split the finals. And rounding out the top eight, we have a bunch more snow. There's Hogak, 2 copies of D&T, and Eldrazi. And then looking at the other event, it was won by D&T, and then we have 3 copies of Snow, a copy of Rug Delver, a Red Prison, and a Hogak. Oh, sorry, and one more Rug Delver. So looking at this and comparing it to where I thought the event was going to be going as of the beginning of this weekend, like I thought that Rug Delver and Snow were going to be the 2 most popular decks, and that's pretty much true. I thought Hogak was going to be showing up. Again, it made appearances in both top eights, and I thought D&T was very, very well positioned in a winner's metagame, and that appears to be true. I do want to highlight one thing real quick. And nope. Okay. Guess not. Okay. The matchups that this player won to make it to top eight were insane. They won, I think it was 3 very unfavorable matchups. I know one of them was Elves, one of them was Oops, and I think the last one was Omni. So they definitely had a good run. And admittedly got a little bit lucky. I think they said one of their Elves players got like stuck on one land, and then they got like Containment Priest and Jitte online immediately to take over the game, or something like that. They took down a really tough set of matches in order to take it to top eight. Kudos to them. So I think that some people seeing these initial results might jump to make some changes for the mirror, and I think that's a bad idea. So let's talk about that. So the approach that both Extra Cloud and I are taking for the mirror right now is ignore the mirror to free up more sideboard slots for other matchups. And I think this is really important. So let's take a look at the stuff for unfair matchups for a second. So this is a sideboard that has 9 cards that are basically specifically for unfair matchups. And if you look at some of the cards that are still over here in this left pile, these are still kind of for unfair matchups in many cases, right? So this comes in versus many combo decks. This comes in versus some things like Omni and combo decks that are, trying to put a major permanent into play. Less so a Skyclave Apparition. And for the Merit Lodge sort of like Tentacle Monster combo matchups, you have Path to Exile. So right now, there's a huge set of tools in the sideboard for unfair matchups. I have X-Ray Cloud's list available in this document. Yes, I do. So like, let's look at X-Ray Cloud's sideboard for comparison. Again, we see Rip, Mindbreak, Trap, Deafening Silence, Containment Priest, Surgical, Cage, Prelate. And again, most of the sideboard, relatively speaking, is stuff that's there for combo matchups. So if you start pulling away at your if you start pulling away at your sideboard to add things to make you better against the mirror, you're actually detracting from some of the things that are actually making the deck really good right now. So Death and Taxes with a bunch of Skyclave Apparitions is really good against Delver and pretty darn good versus Snow as well. Sort of surprisingly on that front, given how the matchup had felt prior to Skyclave Apparition. But that card really, really swung things. And the deck being so good against fair decks is what allows you to spend so many of your sideboard slots patching up the combo matchups. Because those are the hardest things right now by a relatively considerable amount. And if you start trying to make yourself better versus the mirror, you're going to have a much harder time making it to the later rounds of the tournament, where you are mostly going to be playing against Rug Delver and various snow decks. So I don't think it's correct to like panic, change your list, and redo all your sideboard mapping and stuff just a couple hours before a major tournament, just because you have some initial results showing that one deck is good. If you really wanted to adjust something for the mirror, Gideon has been the weakest sideboard slot for me. You could slot a walking ballista into there or something like that, and that wouldn't be absolutely crazy. There are some issues with that though. One of the primary ones being that if you play the mirror against the aspirant version of taxes, walking ballista isn't nearly as good as versus the regular version. So consider an aspirant that has been around for 2 turn cycles, and your opponent is playing conservatively. So they can do something like put 1 counter on an aspirant, put 1 counter on a mom, and then your walking ballista ends up looking relatively embarrassing and is a lot of resources to trade for one creature in comparison to something like Swords of Plowshares or Path to Exile. So I don't know that it's actually correct to sub this out for something that is going to be good in the mirror. And I had already been thinking about like taking this card out to hedge more for fair blue. So all that is to say, I don't think it is correct to adjust for the mirror and throw in anything crazy like a Sword of War and Peace or Pithing Needle or Palace Jailer or anything like that. Because I think the 75, whether it's mine or XJ Clouds, like those decks are relatively well suited to fighting the decks that you're expecting to see in the winner's metagame, with the exception of the mirror. And the rest of the sideboard is built to get you to the later rounds of the tournament by making sure that you can make it through the combo decks with at least some degree of consistency. And I think if you start bastardizing the sideboard to prepare for the mirror, you actually end up putting yourself in an overall worse position, even though you improve yourself against the mirror. All right. This is probably going to be the last one before I kind of do maybe a tournament debrief or something like that. Hope you're enjoying these.